Hello. Today we're going to walk through a demonstration of the Customer Journey Analytics platform. I will start by orienting you to the initial screen here. This is our initial dynamic visualization of our customer journey data. What you're seeing here is all of the different customer touch points represented by different colored boxes, different channels linked together to represent the actual customer journey within your organization. So for example, we have the pink boxes are the web channel, we have yellow is mobile app, blue is voice, we have retail. You could also consider adding email as a channel or chat or survey. Really any interaction point that you'd like to model is able to be represented here as a high-level session or data point, which we'll talk more about a little bit later. These interactions are linked together by customer identifiers. It does not have to be the same identifier in each channel. We do have an algorithm, a customer identity algorithm that can model perhaps somebody logs into the web with a cookie and then a login ID, when there might be a phone number in the voice channel or an email in the email or CRM channel. So we have an algorithm that will actually link all of those together, and so it helps with the ability for us to just take in raw data and not require additional formatting or embellishment from the organization. The number of interactions between sessions, between interactions is represented kind of by the thickness of the line. So you'll see the thicker the line here means more relative traffic from the previous node. So for example, from here we've got about 27 people from our initial start on the web, staying on the web. A smaller percentage represented by a smaller line is going to mobile app or to voice. And it's worth pointing out that the duration of this particular journey that we're visualizing here does have a start to finish time of 2 days. And that is something that is configurable in terms of how you want to visualize it. Days, and it depends on the use case for the industry. So sometimes you might want to look at a journey that happens within days, and sometimes you might want to look at one that happens over the course of a few weeks or months. We also have a filter on the date range, so we're looking at about a month's worth of data here. Again, it's a configurable item. And at this point, we could also apply some filters, some global filters to what we're viewing. And we'll come back to this, but we'll also apply a filter on any particular, let's say, customer attribute or customer metadata piece that you might want to filter on. So let's say you only want to look at the journeys for a group of customers within a particular age range or within a particular demographic, or who have filled out a survey and perhaps they're in the detractor category, or that they own a particular product. So we do have the ability to apply global filters at this point, and then you'll see some of these attributes come back up a little bit later. So that's kind of our initial view. This is all of the data, again, for a particular date range, but we typically start with all data, and you're able to kind of create some scenarios and dive down and look at some specific scenarios or mini journeys, if you will, from here. But let's say, for example, you came into this initial view and you didn't have an inkling of what you wanted to go investigate, or you weren't sure, where the best opportunities were, or you didn't have a journey map that you wanted to, compare the actual data against. So this is where our Journey Excellence Score comes in. And our Journey Excellence Score is a calculated proprietary score on a 0 to 100 scale that calculates essentially the customer effort or the customer experience that your customers are going through when they either, overall interact with your company on the whole, but maybe more specifically when they complete particular business processes or actions within your company. So again, these would be configurable to you. So these might be, things like account management or a new purchase or onboarding or, making a payment, right? So whichever individual business processes that you want to monitor, we can then track the effort associated with those, the customer experience around it, by including all of the data that you have available for us. So, for example, you may, we would calculate these individual scores based on, for example, how many channels does a customer have to utilize to complete this particular transaction? How many steps or days does it take them to complete it? How many phone calls did they have to make? How long were those phone calls? What was the sentiment associated with those calls? Were they angry or happy on those calls? Did they fill out a survey after that particular transaction or life cycle point, and they were unhappy on their survey? So all of these pieces of data come together, and we use them to calculate the scores based on those particular areas, so that you can quantitatively monitor those and also track them over time to see improvements or declines in those particular scores. What's perhaps even more interesting or actionable is this recommended investigation section. So what we're seeing here is really the AI piece of the application bubbling up to the surface, the areas that it thinks that I, as a user, as a business owner, or as an analyst, should go and investigate, that will reveal the biggest opportunity for improvement within these particular scores. So, for example, what the system is recommending that I go investigate, just at the top here, it's saying go build a scenario, and we'll do this in just a minute. Go build a scenario that involves customers on the web channel, so they've accessed the web, and then more specifically on the web, not just anywhere on the web, but in the area where it was labeled as a contact reason for support for TV usage. And a contact reason is really just a detail around that particular channel that we can derive from, either in the case of a web, in case of page URLs, or it could be particular content or areas of the web. And then similarly on the voice, and which is our next channel, it's telling us to go investigate. It's suggesting the same contact reason, but in this case, the contact reason for a voice channel is likely coming from your speech analytics application. What were the pieces that your customer and your agent were talking about on the phone? If you don't have a speech analytics platform like Nexidia, then you could use your CRM or agent disposition notes. But again, we're using that contact reason to get very granular in terms of what was going on within each individual channel. So let's go build a particular scenario that looks like the one that the JESS score, the Journey Excellence score, was recommending that we go investigate. And so that's actually what we have here. And so you'll see it looks very similar to what we talked about building, right? So I've selected, and this is my interactive builder. It's meant to be very easy to use. I can come in here and select any channel, one or many channels. I've selected just the web channel. And here's where I've selected my contact reason. And you can see it's under, a hierarchy type of system here, where a high-level piece might be technical support, but I want to get a little more granular, so that's where it's labeled as support for TV usage. So again, some intelligence around when we're mapping those contact reasons for the different channels. I could also apply some of those attributes that we talked about in the beginning here if I wanted to look at a particular customer type or a particular product type or customer seniority. I could add that in here. And then in my scenario builder, I've also built out my second step, which it told me to look at. And I'm saying that I want to include, in this case, all of my customers who are going from step 1 to step 2, either directly, which means immediately following, or indirectly, which means at some point included in my journey duration time frame. So in this case, it's about 24 hours. So this is the scenario that we've defined. And as you can see, we've really narrowed it down from our initial starting point that had us looking at, upwards of 3 million kind of initial web interactions to, this much, much smaller group here, where we can start to analyze it, for some more detail, and then, continue to dive down into, some of the underlying insights from this particular scenario. So here's another view of these particular numbers where I've identified that about 50,000 of my customers are completing this particular first step that I've defined, and then about another 12,000 of them go on to make that voice call that I talked about with that particular contact reason. So this is our subset or our scenario or mini journey that we're going to start to dive into to learn a little bit more about it. So from here, because it is a scenario that we've built that involves a digital channel, we can go dive down into the essentially into the event layer information of that particular channel. So in the beginning, when we looked at the view that had the pink boxes and the blue boxes, as I mentioned, those were session level details. Here we're getting into the individual steps. So these are the individual pages that your customers have gone through on the website, specifically right before they picked up the phone, right? And we've ranked these journeys by how common they are, with the ones that are the most common, and then by volume. So for example, in this case, about 17% of your customers within this data set that we've defined are going through this exact same journey, right? They're coming in, they're logging into their account, they're looking at their account page. They're actually iterating on this troubleshooting page about 3 times, which is, a little bit of a red flag, so we might want to go look into that. But you can see some of the ones where we're ending here on going to a complaint or looking at some common errors. Here we're actually seeing that one a few times in this particular journey. Others are ending on a reboot, reset receiver option, right? So clearly there's something going on perhaps that's not successful for certain customers that are hitting these particular errors or rebooting suggestions that are driving them to not stay contained within the web channel and then make that phone call. If I want to go investigate a little bit more, I can dive into what's called our Quick Insights piece. Our Quick Insights is going to take those attributes that we talked about in the beginning and analyze them for their likelihood to predict which of my customers are likely to be in this scenario in the first place, right? And we can rank those by that likelihood over here on the left. So you can see some of the ones that we talked about, age range, product type, those types of things. But the one that's being called out as the most likely to predict the scenario is the cable box model. So you can see, for example, not just that, but the actual values of those cable boxes, right? So for example, this top one here, the 7337 model, is the one that's most likely to contribute, most likely to be, have the most impact on the likelihood of my customers being in this scenario in the first place. So, as opposed to some of these other cable box models, right? So what this tells me is, this information combined with what we learned on the digital containment page where we're looking at, last feed stats or, the journeys that my customers went through, perhaps the information about rebooting and resetting a receiver or understanding error messages, right, are not maybe as current as they need to be on this newer cable box model. So perhaps the technical support information on my website didn't get updated to reflect or didn't get updated correctly to reflect this newest cable box model. Another attribute we can look at is customer seniority. And so kind of consistent with that story, we can see that, our customers that are much newer, right, in this like 3-4 months, 5-6 months, are much more likely to have a bigger impact on a likelihood of being in this particular scenario as compared to some of my older customers, the ones that have been with me, on, many number of years. So again, this speaks to perhaps that is a problem that my newer customers are having with some of my newer products, and I need to go and just double check that those customers are in fact, receiving the right information on the web page. From here, I could dive into, I could take this particular scenario and do a drill through into our custom reporting engine underneath. So from here, I could actually load a report if I said, I want to get a list of all of these customers that are in this scenario that have had this problem. Maybe I want to filter them by a particular, cable box model or something like that. And I can see a list now of all of those customers that are in the scenario. I can see other attributes around them, like how long have they been with us, what cable box they have, what product type they have. So this is a great way to drill down from, an initial insight that the Journey Excellence Score application had, told me to go investigate, and now I can drill down into, a very specific list of customer IDs that I could send off to our marketing department or our technical documentation department, maybe, to say, take this list and send the customers, with that new cable box, send them, our updated documentation, just so they have it, and say, sorry, this wasn't available, if that's something appropriate. Or you could use this to feed into a survey system if you wanted to trigger a bunch of surveys to go to a particular list of customers that fit within a certain scenario. And then continuing to kind of drill down from here, we could pick any of these particular customer IDs and drill through into what's called our Journey Excellence Viewer, our individual journey viewer. So now for any particular individual customer, I can see the actual journey that, let's say, Steve has gone through, for a particular time frame with my organization. How many times has he interacted with us? How many times has he, what has he tried to do on the website? What has he been calling in about? What are some of his, what's his own individual Journey Excellence Score, right? So this gives the agent who might be talking to Steve, some really good insight as to what they might be struggling with from here, and, can get a sense for maybe his preferred channel, where he's had some hiccups. But again, it's a great way to get to, that very specific individual customer information. And finally, the last piece that I'll show you back in our scenario view here is our drill through to, Nexidia Analytics, which I mentioned a little bit in the beginning, is our speech analytics platform. So if we are leveraging an install of Nexidia Analytics, then we can take this data set that we've defined and send that into what's called a targeted media set. And by identifying those customers or those calls within the Nexidia platform, we can now launch an integration, or we can leverage our integration with Nexidia to show what do those calls look like, in that application, and we can start to see, the word cloud associated with those calls. We can see the sentiment associated with them. It's really what were the customer and the agent talking about, once they finally did connect. So here you can see, this is the information from the voice channel focus of what the customer and the agent were talking about once they finally did get through. So you can start to see, some typical, error complaints that you might expect in this situation where there's, people trying to reboot their receiver, right? There was no picture, there was no sound. I'm having trouble finding the technical manual. I can come in here and look at the sentiment distribution of those particular calls, or see what the primary topics were on those. And then you can continue to, leverage this interface to, drill down through, to hear the individual calls and do all of the functionality that's associated with the standard Nexidia Interaction Analytics platform. So that concludes our demonstration of the Customer Journey Analytics platform, and thank you for your time.